We'd like to welcome each and every one of you to this afternoon's agenda meeting. This afternoon we'll review those action items that will be formally addressed next Tuesday evening, August 16th at 6 p.m. right here in board chambers of the City Hall. Before I call on the city manager to review those action items, we'd like to call on Gary Troutman to come up, and I think he had an introduction he'd like to make. So Mr. Troutman is the head of the Economic Development and Chamber of Commerce. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Thank you for the time. Cheryl, would you join me, please? Thank you for the opportunity last Tuesday to introduce Don Benton, our newest employee. Today's his birthday, our workforce director and workforce education and employment development manager. Today I'd like to introduce to you someone that hasn't accompanied me yet to a meeting. Cheryl Staggs is our new Chief Financial Officer and Operations Manager for the Chamber and also for the Passport Center. Cheryl, most of you probably know or recognize, she was the Executive Director of OCC for a few years and was Finance Director there for several years before that. And Cheryl joined us about late May and has been doing a great job, and I think most of you all realize a few of you were there. Lisa retired a couple of weeks ago, so just wanted to introduce you all to Cheryl, and we look forward to working with you for years to come. Thank you.
Very good. Welcome.
Welcome.
Now I'll call upon Mr. Bill Burrough, City Manager, to review those action items.
Thank you, Mayor. First, under your consent agenda, we have Resolution R22-123, a resolution acknowledging receipt of the City of Hot Springs financial statements for June 2022, and Karen Scott, our Finance Director, will present that item.
Yes, thank you. I'm here to present the financial statements. They will be in your board packet. I do want to say they're the same ones that you received in your agenda, your packet for Saturday's retreat. There's been no changes to them. They're the same ones, and they're for your consideration and acceptance.
Very good. Any questions? I do want to have everybody be aware that Director Marcia Dobbs-Smith is joining us via Zoom, and Director Holliday will be arriving shortly, and but we'll be missing Director Jones today. Thank you.
Our next item is consider Resolution R22-124, a resolution approving the application of Arkansas Destinations, Inc. for a charter services transportation permit, and our City Clerk, Harmony Morrissey, will present.
Thank you. On July 11th, Arkansas Destinations filed an application requesting authority to operate charter transportation services in the city of Hot Springs. Arkansas Destinations has been operating in Little Rock since '06, and they have a fleet of minibuses, trolleys, motor coaches, and shuttles. They are currently permitted through the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and the Arkansas State Highway Commission as a common carrier by motor vehicle in interstate commerce for special and charter operations. The Transportation Advisory Committee conducted a duly advertised public hearing on July 27th, during which they reviewed the application materials and the request. They received no protest to the applications, considered the information, and unanimously voted to recommend to the board to grant the transportation permit authorizing Arkansas Destinations to operate charter services in Hot Springs. I do want to make one comment that the Hot Springs Code section pertaining to charter services requires the applicant to obtain a permit issued by the board of directors. However, the requirement to license vehicles under that permit does not apply to charter permits. So once the applicant is issued a charter permit, they would register the vehicles that they intend to operate under the permit whenever they submit or renew their annual permit fee. So it's a little bit different.
How many vehicles are they looking to?
Well, that's kind of what I mean by they don't license a particular number. So once they get the permit, they will let us know how many they intend to use here in town. This would just be a charter service, so they're not doing any sightseeing. It's just simply if they have a job with an event or a wedding here in Hot Springs, they would bring that vehicle. So I assume that they will probably register the majority of their fleet to have that ability to bring whatever down. But they will just have a permit, and so that's just the permit fee. The additional licensing fee would not apply here.
So they'll be working from point A to point B as chartered, but not have any tours or anything advertised that they will do in Hot Springs.
Correct, just the charter service, and that is defined in our code. So,
right.
Yes, ma'am.
So is this a new provider of service, or, I mean, is the permit holder somebody who's currently a provider of some style service, then they're just creating another entity to do this?
Well, they're a provider in the central Arkansas area through their home base in Little Rock, but they currently do not operate for charter services within the city of Hot Springs. They have been in our city before, and the way it is worded, they can do that under their current operations in Little Rock when the charter transportation travel begins outside of Hot Springs. So they have brought other groups here from Little Rock, but it hasn't originated in Hot Springs under this. This would allow them to originate in the city of Hot Springs and transport people within the city.
Any further questions of our city clerk? Thank you.
Next, we have Resolution R22-125, a resolution acknowledging the review of the 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Audit Report. And again, Ms. Scott.
I thought Mike was taking over there for a minute.
Thank you. Gary Welch will be here to make a presentation at the regular board meeting. The audited financial statements were presented to you on Saturday in accordance with the law so that you had a physical copy of them 10 days in advance. And I will also be here to answer any questions should you have any.
Any further questions of the board? Thank you.
Next, Resolution R22-126, a resolution declaring a certain structure located at 706 Summer Street a nuisance and condemning same pursuant to Title 17 of the Hot Springs Code. And our Chief Building Official, Mike Scott, will present.
Sorry, I didn't get the new schedule yet. So.
You
But anyway,
feel more comfortable with this subject?
Yes, sir. I'm very much more comfortable with this.
So are we.
All right, at 706 Summer, there are 2 units there, a A and a B. And at this time, we're looking at condemning the garage apartment in the back. Neighborhood Services had a file on this structure since 2006. And in April of 2021, it was determined that both structures were vacant and wide open. The property was owned by Miss Ophelia Tarango, who passed away in August of last year. The will has been probated and the heirs notified via certified mail. We have received those verifications. The dangerous issues at this property include weak and sagging and rotten floors in the apartment, which is upstairs over the garage. Weak and improperly installed stairway in the apartment, broken and missing windows and doors, outdated and missing plumbing and electrical components. There are currently no liens on this property.
Any questions of Mike on this topic? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Resolution R22-127, a resolution awarding a contract to Michael's Trenchless, a division of Michael's Corporation, for the design and construction services and contract for the Lake Ouachita Water Supply Intake Project in the amount of $14 million. And our project manager, Todd Pillar, will present.
Thank you and good afternoon. This is a fixed price design build contract, contract 4, which is our lake crossings. There's 2 parts to it. There's the upper Lake Hamilton part near Treasure Isle Road, where we're going to float and sink the 42-inch steel pipe as a construction method. And then between the other crossing is between Timberlake Road and Northmore Road under Mazarin Creek. And that portion is about $10 million, and the float and sink portion is about $4 million. Staff selected Michael's just like we did for the intake structure and tunnel. We sent out 3 RFP packets to Bradshaw, Garney Garver, and Michael's Trenchless. 2 packets were received back, and through the RFP packet rate and rank process, staff selected Michael's. And during that negotiations for the contract, we did some value engineering items and reduced the price by about $1 million. The original price in the RFP from Michael's was right at about 14.9 million, and the fixed price design build contract that'll be presented to the board next Tuesday is right at $14 million, and of course it'll be taken from the 2020 water bond fund, or board approved water bond fund.
Very good. Any questions of Todd? Director Garcia.
We'll have the contract in our packet right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said it's fixed price, so if they have any contingency built in, it'll be reflected?
Yeah, it's a fixed price. There won't be any
It
changeovers.
won't show it, okay,
Right.
that's why I want to make sure,
Yeah.
thank you.
Fixed price, design, build.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Resolution R-22-128, a resolution approving a substantial amendment to the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, fiscal years 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 annual action plans to repurpose $249,958.31 in total funds and for other purposes, and our Planning and Development Director, Kathy Sellman, will present this item.
Thank you. The City of Hot Springs was designated a Community Development Block Grant Entitlement City in 2003. And as a requirement under that designation, the city submits an annual action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development describing projects to be undertaken and exactly how those funds will be expended. There is a provision for when a city's priorities, expenditures, activities, purposes, project location, beneficiaries, or grant funding that are part of the annual action plan might change. There is a requirement for the city to do what is called a substantial amendment. You should be very familiar with this. This is the third amendment to the 2017 annual action plan, the fourth amendment to the 2018 plan, the second amendment to the 2019 plan, and the second amendment to the 2020 plan. And this is in order to reprogram $249,958.31 in unencumbered funds from projects that were either completed, under budget, or canceled. And the purpose of reprogramming these funds is to provide rent and utility service cost burden relief for low and moderate income residents and limited clientele in response to the coronavirus pandemic. The federal regulation requires citizen notification and participation in the program. This substantial amendment was made available for review and comment in a variety of ways online at cityhs.net, in hard copy in the Planning and Development Office, and it was electronically distributed in full for review and comment to 60 residents on the CDBG mailing list on July 5th of this year. There was notice in the Sentinel Record newspaper on July 3rd and 10th, online versus cityhs.net, the Community Development Advisory Committee, and Board of Directors meeting earlier this year. All of those public meetings were duly advertised and included contact information in case anyone needed to request accommodation. This repurposing includes 2020 CDBG CV funds, which includes $213,042.08 from the 2020 CV3 Quarantine Shelter Facility Project. And this is intended to aid the city in drawing down those funds. Should those funds not be expended before November 2nd, 2023, at which time we have to have drawn down at least 80% of that grant, we can be required to refund the difference up to 80% back to HUD. That doesn't seem like a good idea. And we have other needs in the city, including rent emergency subsistence payments, utility emergency subsistence payments, community-based arts program to be managed by Cutwell for Kids. That would be an amount of $5,300. and Miss Ida's House of Care and Love Rehabilitation Phases 1 and 2. And this is in the amount of $21,000. As nonprofits asking for funds through CDBG, these were part of the 2020 request applications that came in. The amount of the grant that we got was not sufficient to fund all projects, and these two projects, Cutwell for Kids, actually was partially funded. This would fund the rest of their program. And Miss Ida's House of Care and Love Rehabilitation, both were in there. And as nonprofits, the city's policy requires that there be a one-to-one match. The Cutwell for Kids application requested match waiver. The Miss Ida's House of Care and Love project did not request a waiver of that one-to-one match, but uses the equity of the structure that is used for this project as their match. They are not asking for the grant to purchase a location for the program, so that is being used as a match. This was when the Community Development Advisory Committee considered this request for the substantial amendment, taking us through amending 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. They unanimously recommended that the board fund these projects as presented. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Director Garcia.
Is the Miss Ida's building owned by the nonprofit, or is
It is owned by the nonprofit. Yes, it is.
And that does that qualify under the guidelines of federal grants for matching?
It does.
Okay, because most I'm aware of that the market value of rent that's not paid is the match, but not for your, just the depreciation on your buildings you own.
Yeah, the Community Development Block Grant has always operated in compliance with the federal guidelines and laws. The one-to-one match, in fact, is a policy that was adopted by the Board of Directors a number of years ago. So we ask the match on our own. It is not a requirement from HUD.
Okay, so it's the city match, but not the federal match
Yes.
guidelines. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Resolution R 22-129, a resolution authorizing an agreement for parking design and implementation services with Walker Consultants, Inc., amending the 2022 budget and for other purposes in the amount of $90,000, not the 85 that you currently see. It's 90.
Thank you. The recommendation from city staff is to award a contract to Walker Consultants. City staff issued a statement of request for a statement of qualifications for professional services to assist us in our downtown parking project. In doing so, we received 3 responses. Through the rating and ranking process, we scored Walker Consultants as the highest responding firm. Walker Consultants, a little bit about them. They are a national firm. They have offices kind of across the country. They've done several projects very similar in similar localities as Hot Springs, Boulder, Colorado, Bozeman, Montana, Hilton Head, South Carolina, where they're really helping to develop a parking program. And in city staff, when we issued this statement of qualifications, one of the things that we did when we wrote it was specifically we excluded those parking providers that sell or in the business of providing those parking meters, parking software, hardware, infrastructure. So really what we were looking for was a parking consultant to help us in designing, developing, but also implementing a comprehensive pay parking program. So in order to get there, Walker's proposal is a 12-week proposal. The project cost is $85,000. That's a lump sum fee. It's pretty heavy on the community engagement, stakeholder engagement as well, because obviously this has been something that's been talked about for a good while. We want to ensure that we reach out to everyone that has an interest in our downtown parking. There's also 2 public input sessions for the general public, and additionally, a report will be provided to the board that really kind of helps bring that parking program to the board for your consideration and adoption. Couple components of their contract for services. They will assist city staff in developing a request for proposals to procure the hardware and software that we need to make this from a parking review into an implementation program. And that's really an important component of it to actually get the hardware and software that we need. Really, when we're talking about parking, talking about on-street, off-street, we've got some parking structures as well. Hot Springs has some unique attributes because obviously we do have some transportation permits within our downtown parking area, and within your packet they'll have some additional information about Walker and their proposal, but all told, the budget adjustment that we're requesting will be for $90,000 to possibly if there's any incidentals that come about, and we would transfer that money into the parking fund, professional services from the board's reserved fund for parking specific improvements. As part of their study, they will also help us on the implementation of these rates that we need to establish so we can understand exactly about how much revenue we can expect to have from our parking program, and really kind of help us in determining the staffing from citations to parking rates and reviews. So it's really a comprehensive parking program, but it really takes it from the study side that we've done multiple times into the implementation. So that'll conclude the report.
Any questions of Lance? Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. Can we just ensure that the information, as much as possible, be given out to the public, that so there's no misunderstanding? That a big component, as you just mentioned, is getting the right criteria for the technology needed for the pay parking. And with the changes in technology, it's important that we get that right before you send out the bids for that equipment for the software and hardware. And that it is not a study. This is an implementation in getting everything right on those qualifications for our software, hardware, and getting the rates in there correctly. So there was some misunderstanding before, and would like to make sure that the public is aware it is not another study.
Correct. And you'll hear whenever you receive your packet, they call it smart parking. That's really where you're using technology and trying to really make it as efficient as possible. But our parking, we kind of have a tall order for ourselves. We've got about 300 coin-operated meters. Vast majority is unmetered parking. So we do have quite a bit of work ahead of us, and we're city staff with Public Works, Street, and Finance, Police Department, everybody. We're really kind of committed to move this project along, because I think it's been a long time coming.
I want to thank Director Garcia for focusing on implementation. I know we talked about this at our retreat. So 12 weeks, we'll be able to have the ability, or where will we be at on including the implementation phase in our budget for 2023?
That's correct. That's when we get to that 12th week, the board will have before them that parking review, and it'll have within it expected budget to procure the hardware, software that we need. But as we move into the latter part of 22, we will be issuing request for proposals to procure that parking hardware and software. So as we move into 23, of course, we'll have sufficient budget for that.
And the consultant, he's going to assist us with rates as well as, designing the system using the various tools or technology available for the application. Are they just done then? I mean, they say thank you and...
No, that's also a component of it is they will they'll stay with us to ensure that whatever vendor, whatever parking hardware, software, meters, kiosks, whatever we do select and go with, that they stay with us to ensure that it is a successful launch, because you're going to have applications on your phone, you're going to have website, etc. So it's really going to kind of, like I said before, it's very much a comprehensive program that Walker Consultants has done multiple times, and I think they're excited to come to Hot Springs because of some of the work they've done in Little Rock, some of the work they've done in Bentonville. So I think this is a good compliment.
And I agree. I think that they're in a better position to really determine the quality of the bids that we've got and the time frame for implementation. And I'd hate to see them just up and leave and not be available for some form of, what do you want to call it, go live date, so to speak.
Definitely. You don't get many opportunities to do this. We want to make sure we do it correctly.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you.
Next, we have your first ordinance of the evening, and it's ordinance O-2236, an ordinance adopting the 2022 Hot Springs Mechanical Code, repealing certain ordinances and for other purposes. And again, our chief building official, Mr. Scott.
Thank you. Effective July 1st, 2022, the Arkansas Heating, Ventilation, Air Conditioning, and Refrigeration Board adopted the International Mechanical Code 2021 version. City of Hot Springs desires to update our mechanical code to that current edition. The biggest changes are that there's an increase of fees. I surveyed 4 towns close to us, and their fees range from North Little Rock, 10 cents a square foot, Little Rock, 8.75 cents a square foot, Bryant, 14 cents a square foot, and Texarkana was on a different kind of fee schedule. It's kind of hard they were by BTUs. So I ran a scenario with a 2,000 square foot house, similar size unit, and it came out to about $20 more expensive than ours at 10 cents a square foot. So,
Any questions of Mike?
are there any questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have ordinance O-2237, an ordinance adopting the 2022 Hot Springs Electrical Code, repealing certain ordinances and for other purposes. And again, Mr. Scott.
The 2022 National Electric Code has been published, and the city desires to update our code to the most current edition. We currently are under the 2017. The state is in the process of adopting this code, so we would like to go ahead and do it. And the fees are exactly the same as the plumbing and the mechanical. Therefore, all the sub-trades would be exactly the same. And the same survey was done with the same cities, and theirs are also the same. So,
Any further questions of Mike? Electrical? Thank you.
thank you.
Mayor, the next item on the preliminary agenda here is item number 10, and staff is going to ask that be removed from the meeting for next Tuesday night.
Well, then that,
Could I ask a question?
yes,
about
Director
that?
Garcia.
Why are we pursuing that?
I'll give you a brief rundown on it. Beginning in 2012, the city received its natural gas services for its needs at the wastewater treatment plant and animal services on Davidson Drive through a third-party bulk account. The rationale behind doing that in 2012 was it saved us about $75,000 a year on the natural gas expenses at those 2 locations. That contract is expiring, and so while state law does not require bidding for that type of service, staff did believe that we needed to get some quotes, and so Mr. Ledbetter, who's not here, and his office received some quotes from 3 new providers. Quite frankly, the formulas that are used in calculating what the end price is are pretty intricate. we're not, Mr. Burr and I are not comfortable comparing apples to apples for you today, and so we're just not ready to bring it to you now. If your question is why are we looking at bulk versus a regular retail type of a meter, I need to look into that as well. I am told that we are not eligible at those locations to be a regular retail customer.
Well, now that Arkansas is being converted to Summit, has Summit given that? I think we should get that feedback. But this particular company, when I looked up, it showed some surrounding states they were doing business in, but it didn't show Arkansas. But there was also a scandal a few years ago. I don't know if it's the very same company, but it had the same name that was involved in embezzlement and overbilling in the Venezuela energy scandal that happened and was identified in 2015.
I'll look into that as well. I will tell you that Summit is the one that recommended the three vendors that we received the quotes from.
And they didn't want to service it?
Correct.
Well, and it's, you know, it's important to note our current agreement is not with Summit, it's with a company named Symmetry. And that's who our bulk contract is for that transport through the pipe. Summit owns the pipeline, and the best I can understand to explain that is certain portions of that pipeline are owned by other companies, and these are transport services that transfers the gas from one area to another. So Symmetry is who we are currently engaged with, as well as the A&P. And we have I believe a contract that required a 180-day notification with that. So they contacted us actually and said, look, we need to look at some new rates, and your agreement's coming to an end. So that's how this got on the forefront of what we're looking at.
Thank you for that information. But with them being new ones, I hope they're fully vetted, because there has been different issues with a lot of the new companies, and some of them got government money but did not properly utilize it within the company. That's all I want to say right now.
Mayor, that concludes the items for your next Tuesday night's meeting.
Very good. Well, we look forward to everybody's participation, both those of us as city board members and those within the public and those who may join us streaming live. But next Tuesday at 6 o'clock, we'll review and take action on these agenda items. So until then, be safe, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.